Well, it is the Pete Sousa Show here on a Wednesday. It's 1:02 Central Time, and we're presented by Slovacics. You see Scotty Swingler right there on the wheels of steel. He'll be joining us throughout this first segment due to, honestly, a technical difficulty that can't get Scotty off the screen and still have the audio work.
Sorry about this.
Yeah, but let's face it. You are by trade, a broadcaster, I would say.
Yes.
And I do want to bring you in for a part of this conversation because we're going to talk about your sweet spot, which is Big 12 football.
Oh, yeah.
Baylor somewhere in the mix here. We taped that Big 12 show today, and it's so interesting. You look at the logjam that is the Big 12. After number one, BYU, now with Iowa State losing, Kansas State losing again, there's a logjam. In that second spot, it looks like Iowa State still really is in command, but a lot can happen between now and the end of the season. One thing that happened last night, it was kind of lost in the election stuff and coverage for most of us. I guess it was not for me because it's more frustrating than any election result for anybody as far as I'm concerned, because I am like white hot about BYU. And the fact that they are 9th in the college football playoff top 25. Can you throw that graphic up there, Scotty? Are we able to do that? We're about to show you the top 25, and we'll show you in order, and you get to see, what's that? 2 seconds, he said. And we'll get to see, you actually heard him say 2 seconds, but we'll see where BYU is. And I want to show you, interestingly enough, about who is in front of them. And it's a scenario where if you look at, I wonder really, are these people who are in charge of this stuff, are they watching these games played in the Big 12 conference? I truly feel when you see BYU ranked 9th in the country, still undefeated. Think about that now. We got a Power 4 undefeated team that is ranked 9th in the country. As Scotty works on getting the top 25 up there, I'll just spoil it for you. There are 4 teams. There it is right there. So 4 teams in front of Baylor. It is Indiana, Texas, Miami, and Tennessee. Okay. Now, I want you to know that BYU on its own, ranked 9th in that graphic you see there, has more top 25 wins than the 4 teams. They have 2, right? Beating Kansas State and beating SMU, who's now 18th in the country and playing like, are they 18th or 13th? I can't.
Kansas State?
No. SMU.
Yeah, 13th.
13th in the country. So they beat a team that was 13th. They beat another team in the top 25. Both of those teams are still in the college football playoff top 25. And the 4 teams ahead of them, whose names I just read, they combined don't have that many wins against a top 25 opponent. So, like, I really am struggling getting it through my head, like, where the disconnect is. Strength of schedule for BYU is exceptional. They're ranked in the top 10. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly where, but Scotty, can you make sense of this for me? Somebody who's been, and don't, give me, yes, me. I mean, like, maybe I'm wrong, but I certainly don't feel like I am.
No, I mean, that's why, it confuses me. We were talking earlier today about how Indiana's schedule has actually been so weak. And how
they have not played a bowl eligible team.
And yet they're ahead of BYU, right? And so, when there's just no excuse for it other than it's BYU is not your traditional blue blood name program.
And really what that means is, BYU being ranked 9th, and you said being there because they lacked maybe some of the pageantry that those other teams can bring to the mix of the college football playoff. They're 9th right now. Now, if BYU were to hold serve and finish undefeated and win the Big 12, they'll go to the playoff. Can we put that playoff picture up there? Because this is an idea of what the college football playoff looks like right now. BYU will get a bye in that first round. And is it up there? No, it's okay. BYU will get a bye in that first round. And by getting a bye in that first round, they'll not only obviously be rested and have what they sort of complicated doing this is it's our first time around. But if you look at that top 25, or I can just remember if I'll tell you about it. Oregon ranked number 1. There you go. Thanks, Scotty. They supersede anything Ohio State is doing, being ranked before BYU. So what really would happen was Ohio State would have to play in the first round, ultimately probably win, and then they would play on the road at a school like BYU. And it's a front. Here is Joey Galloway had a great point last night. I was watching the selection show on ESPN, and he said, "Hey, if Herbie was here, talking about Kirk Herbstreit, because everybody was freaking out, right? Especially who was it? Oh, Booger McFarland was losing it about, and honestly, I forget what. He was losing it before they unveiled it. He was losing it about Indiana not getting respect. And I like what Joey Galloway said. He said, "Look, this is not. This isn't the end of the season. Like, we shouldn't get so excited. This is a work in progress, pretty much. This is not the be all end all." My argument to that is, well, it does make a huge difference, because now this is where these teams are baked in to start this championship, this playoff march. And BYU starting off that march at 9, not only does it significantly impacts their chances if they suffer a loss, but it also impacts teams like Colorado. When you look at the strength of the Big 12, there's clearly a lack of respect. And if you were to look at the top 8 teams in the Big 12, I have Baylor now 8th in that top 8, which is Baylor. You do not want to play Baylor right now. And so then you have teams like Arizona State, Cincinnati, Texas Tech, who just beat Iowa State, of course, Iowa State, Kansas State, a lot of teams who nobody in the country wants to play. But if you're a Notre Dame, even though you lost earlier in the season to an opponent that, looking at the schedule now, obviously not a great win or not a great loss, I struggle to wrap my mind around what some of these folks who are voting on this stuff are seeing. I mean, the Northern Illinois victory or loss for Indiana is big right now. Northern Illinois is 4-4. You know, that's just not something I'm happy about today. You know, Scotty, what are your thoughts since we have you on the screen? I mean, this is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah. So I think I wonder if TCU's debacle against Georgia in the national championship has lent itself to this Big 12 isn't as good narrative, right? Like, the way you overcome this is you want a BYU to get in and win a game, like beat one of these Big 10 or SEC schools that maybe is getting the benefit of a doubt. So, you know, because there is a disrespect, I think, for the Big 12 that puts it below the Big 10 in a way that I don't think is justified.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's just name brand program. Like if Utah was the undefeated team in the Big 12 right now, they would not be 9.
Yeah.
They would be 4 or 5. I mean, easy. So I don't know. I don't know. You know, I grew up watching Big 12 football, so I'm biased, but
so am I, because of, like, you know, where I live now and a lot of the coverage I do, and I get a hands-on feel for how good the conference is, and it's really good because there's opportunities to see, obviously, some of these other conferences. They're on all the time, and I do believe truly that now the Big 12 is getting some of that Pac-12 treatment in the past, where you play so late at night that literally people aren't watching you. Yeah. And I think that really has had a profound impact on BYU, even a little bit of an impact, whether you like it or not, and you don't want to believe it because of all the sizzle around Colorado. But, like, they're ranked 20th. Okay, I kind of see it, but there's now a real path for them after they're the big winner here from Iowa State and Kansas State in particular, losing this past week. It really opens up a path for Colorado to make it to that college football playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, all I think is you don't overcome this unless the team that gets into the playoff wins a game. You want BYU to beat Ohio State or whoever it may be.
Yeah.
And then next season you say, if you're still underrating the Big 12 at that point, what are you doing?
Yeah, you might be right. It could be like a long-term thing, which is sickening to think about. When you mentioned that TCU loss to Georgia, well, I could counter that and say, well, they beat the brakes off of Michigan,
right,
in the semifinal game, right? Like, I know the Big Ten is revamped somewhat, but I don't know. That's a tough one. It's just tough to take, and I know that BYU fans are probably really pissed when they see that. But hey, they just got to handle their business.
This is actually why I'm thankful for the way that it is currently structured, where even if BYU's 8th, 9th, they get that 4th bye, that number 4 seed, essentially. Yeah. Like I'm already hearing analysts push back against that model of like, we shouldn't give the 4 auto bids to the conference champions, but I like that. I like rewarding a conference championship. Too. It bothered me in the 4-team model that you could have 2 SEC schools get in and you leave out 2, power conference or 3 power conference champs, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a built-in check that helps.
This is going to be so cool, this playoff, to see really, who's for real. I really hope when it boils down that teams that are deserving get in there. One thing about BYU I wanted to, before we get to our next segment with Cam Stewart. So I saw this. So a BYU running back, I'm pulling up the guy's name here. Where is it? Maybe I think it's, I want to get it right. Hold on. I think I texted it to myself. Please stay with me. This is how my brain works very slowly. Jalen Glover is a running back for Utah. He's been out since pretty much the early portion
for BYU.
For Utah.
Oh, for Utah. Okay.
So he practices, he gets done with practice, and he meets with the media. And he's meeting with the media, and he says, they were like, what do you think about this rivalry? And he says the full word, FUCK BYU, which I'm like, well, now, all right. Like, we got a rivalry here that is like, I love it, because Utah, by the way, they're not very good this year. No. And if the record is any indication, they're not, at least. And so now we've got a little more gasoline poured onto this fire, and I consider myself the president of the competition committee. I decide what is competitive or not. And as the czar and the president of the competition committee, I think this is great. It's a guy, I understand the language isn't perfect, but it's a guy that, like, there's bad blood here. I mean, this dude, I think the guy Glover I think this is his first year with Utah, or maybe his second. But I guess, did they not play last year?
I don't remember.
I'd have to look it up. Anyways, he mentioned that he was new to, he called it the Cold War. It's a holy war. He was new to the rivalry, and then he said, "But F BYU, right?" And then he goes around, and let me get his exact statement up here. He takes it back, which I was like, come on, dude.
Stay with
it. That wasn't that bad. Utah player Jalen Glover apologizes. This is from the Salt Lake Tribune. See how long it takes before they kick me out of here if I don't have a password. Jalen Glover kicked off the BYU-Utah rivalry week with bulletin board material. On Monday night, the Utes junior running back was asked about the significance of the return of the in-state rivalry. He did not mince any words. He went on to say, excuse my language, but it's he said the full word, BYU, Glover said. I've never been a part of the Cold War. Well, neither have I been. I think Rocky and Drago handled that for us in the Cold War. But I'm excited, man. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to be out there to go fight a battle with these guys. But he said we have to beat them boys down south. Then later, right away, somebody got to this poor kid. And he tweets out, I want to apologize for the language that I used during post-practice media tonight. This is Glover said on his X account. It doesn't represent who I am or our program and was a lapse in judgment. As a program, we respect every opponent we face, and we have respect for BYU and are excited to play them. And let's just give a little context on my man here. This season, the junior running back has been out of the lineup due to personal issues. Glover finally got back on the field in the Utes' 17-14 loss to Houston 2 weeks ago. He had 4 carries and 33 yards. I don't know. It sounds to me like somebody moved him to apologize, and at this point, see, here's my thinking on all this. Okay. First of all, it's nothing. You already did it, and it's not like egregious. So just let it hang out there. I don't think a formal apology was necessary. Yeah, he shouldn't have used the language. And yeah, you probably don't want to give the opposing team bulletin board material. But I think when you come back around and you say, hey, I take it back, and that's not how we compete. It's like, come on, dude, you guys got some edge. Like, let's be on the edge. We got nothing to lose. We're playing an undefeated team in a rivalry game. Like, at this point, the material is on the bulletin board. There's no taking it down. Unless his mom called and was like, hey, you got to apologize. Like, outside of that, I think like that's the only person that could really, because I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he was like, what do people think these guys are saying in the locker room before a game, before they play BYU? Do you think they're saying like, can't wait to play BYU? Like, what an opportunity. No, they're running around, throwing trash cans, screaming F BYU. By the way, did you see Joey McGuire's ear this week?
Yes.
So did you see the story behind that?
Yeah.
Okay, I can tell you when I was at Richmond and I did not play, but I was on the team because I was recruited there to play and couldn't play because I was injured, but they kept me on scholarship. And I was in every home game. I was in the locker room, some road games. And our coach, Joe Cullen, who is now the defensive line coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, would walk into the locker room, and he would. This is long before the game, okay? And he'd be like, "They're coming into your house. They're gonna kill your mother." And then he'd look into a trash can and he'd go, "Ah!" And he'd throw up, right? "Ah!" And then he would start throwing the trash can, which he just threw up in, all around the locker room. And it would go by like my buddy Eric Good's head. He's like this D-back. He'd sit in his locker. He'd be like, what? It was like out of control. And these coaches are Frank Leonard, one of our positional coaches. It's like fighting Joe Cullen, like I'm like, what? And guys, honestly, this was a sign of one of the bad teams we had. Like guys would laugh, I don't think in the Texas Tech pregame, which Joey McGuire says, their strength coach threw a trash can and it hit Joey's ear. And that's what did it. He hit the head coach's ear, by the way.
That's great.
It's great, but it shows that intensity and that on the edge and that MFer is still there in every locker room. So I don't think it was necessary to take a statement like that back for Glover.
I agree. I mean, you talk to enough college football players. If you are a great college football player, your mindset is just different. It is not like operating anywhere else in the real world. You've got to be a little crazy if you're going to be great at playing football. I mean,
100%. And I don't think there's anything wrong with letting people be like come behind the curtain a little bit to see the emotion for which you are excited to play with. All right. Speaking of emotion and excitement, Cam Stewart waiting in the wings. We're going to talk to him shortly here after a quick break. It is the Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network.
It's the Pete Sousa Show, sports